bells ringing, diamonds blinging, carols singing.
Hi friends, it's Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am very excited to share the most surprising books that I read this year. So I already posted yesterday my most disappointing reads of the year, and today I am here to share my most surprising reads of the year. I have a lot more surprising reads than I did disappointing reads. So on the very top, the very top was a book that I'm going to go ahead and spoil it and say this book did not make it onto my best books of the year, but it was so close. Consider it an honorable mention. This is a book that I literally am so shocked that I loved it as much as I did, because it's from a genre that I don't read much of. I almost unhauled this book without reading it. You guys convinced me to give it a try, and I'm so happy that you did. I'm talking about The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. So close, so close to making it onto my best books of the year. This one starts in 1921. It moves on to 1934, and it's an uncertain and perilous time because you're dealing with the Great Depression, you're dealing with the Dust Bowl, and you just follow this story of this family. Very harrowing time in American history, and I just thought the way that she handled not only the time period but the characters and the pacing so well. So if you're like me and you don't read a lot of historical fiction, consider this one like I did, and it might surprise you as well. All right, apparently we're talking about big books because this next one is a behemoth of a book too. Absolutely took a chance on this one because it's by an author that I've read several books from before, and I haven't really liked any of them. I'm talking about Billy Summers by Stephen King. Y'all, this is my favorite Stephen King book. It is not horror, but it's about this man that is a sniper and he's doing one last job. But even that, like, even though I was interested in that, the story took a turn and I was so much more invested in the characters and the plot and what would happen. And I don't know, it was just, I loved the characters. Even though it's chunky, it didn't feel like overly written or too descriptive or anything like that, but I just loved it so much. I loved Billy Summers. I love another character that pops in about halfway through, and it was just very unexpected. And yeah, I think about this book all the time. All right, next up is a book that I have talked about so much on my podcast, but I don't know if I've talked about it a lot with you guys, and that's American Kingpin, the epic manhunt for, what is it? For the criminal mastermind behind the Silk Road by Nick Bilton. This is a nonfiction true crime book about this man named Ross Ulbricht who created the Silk Road, which is this like underground dark web website where you can sell and buy drugs and guns and passports and a whole bunch of other stuff that's illegal. And kind of the FBI and CIA and police officers and detectives and people that work in an airport, what are they called? You know, those people, security people that kind of brought them down. It obviously, true story. And even though like I don't know anything about like setting up a website or Bitcoin or any of that stuff, like it was so fascinating to read about. It does have pictures in here. But I was obsessed with this book. I highlighted so much that my highlighter ran out halfway through the book, and I had to start like using a different highlighter. Like I highlighted a lot of this book, y'all. There is also a movie adaptation. There are tons of news articles. I was just obsessed with this book. If you don't like nonfiction, if you don't like true crime, I would still say if you read thrillers to give this one a go because it was so thrilling. The beginning is like, as a thriller, it's maybe a little slow, but it's not slow as like a nonfiction or true crime. It's just very interesting finding out about this character and what made him want to do this. And then it just jumps right in with like how he made this happen and how he was getting away with it for so long. And I am just fascinated by this book. So I would highly recommend pretty much everybody pick this up because it has a lot of different cool elements to the story. So yes, the adaptation is good, but the book goes so much more in detail. So highly recommend. Next up is a book by an author that I've read books from before, just thought they were average, and I ended up really liking this one. The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. This one was actually really creepy to me. The ghost elements were really like terrifying. I liked the like true crime themes throughout this. Also there being this like podcaster, blogger person as well. Simone St. James usually writes paranormal books. I'm not a huge fan of paranormal. And so why did I like this book and why am I so shocked? That's why it's on this list, is because I was so shocked that someone was finally able to write a paranormal story that I really vibed with. So yeah, The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. Next up, a sci-fi book, Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. I put this on this list, and there's a couple of other on this list because they're sci-fi, and I pretty much have never read sci-fi before this year, but my friend Jordan from Sorry Book Solid was looking for some more sci-fi books, so I was looking for some recommendations that I could give her, and I kind of know her reading taste and know what things she likes in like other books, like romance books, thriller books, contemporary books. So I was looking for things that she likes in those books, but finding them in sci-fi books, and this seemed like one that she would like, as well as another one on this list, but they also sounded interesting to me as well. So I really like this one because you follow a artificial friend that's in this store and is kind of watching the world around them, and that is the main protagonist in this story. So I thought it was really heartfelt and just really unique, unlike anything I've ever read from before. Wild by Cheryl Strayed. It also has a longer title, From Lost to Found on the Pacific Crest Trail. I have been wanting to read this since it was like an Oprah book club pick. Like this book has been around forever, but I finally got around to reading it this year and absolutely loving it, like head over heels obsessed. I ended up buying 8 more hiking books this year because of this one. I have hiked pretty much all my life, but I've never been like had the nice backpack and the nice boots and the nice, you know, all of that stuff. But like me and my husband went crazy. We got all of the gear for all of the hiking, and I'm so excited to do some more hiking in 2023, but this really sparked my love of that. I loved it. Is it accurate? I'm not here to debate that. I'm here to say that it inspired me and that it could possibly inspire you too. So I was pleasantly surprised by this one. Next up is a small little book that I bought because of the cover, let's be honest, but it is The Swimmers by Julie Otsuka. I've never read Julie Otsuka before, but this one just meant something special to me at the time that I read it. It's kind of a story told in two parts. You start with this group of swimmers and they all go to this community pool, and they always do. It's like a schedule thing. Like it's always the same people, and it talks about the slow lane people, the middle lane people, the fast lane people, and kind of like it's like this Greek chorus we type thing. But then a little bit into the novel, a crack forms in the pool and the pool closes down, and the story takes a different approach and follows Alice, an aging Japanese American woman that has dementia, and just those chapters talking about her, what she can remember and what she can't remember, meant so much to me and related to things that I'm dealing with in my own life. So it just really holds a special place in my heart, and I definitely was not expecting that, so it definitely has to go on this list. Next up, a book that everybody hates but I really enjoyed, and that is Baby Teeth by Zoji Stage. I'm not sure how to say the author's first name, to be completely honest, but I really enjoyed this. I am one of those people, those weird people that like creepy kid books. So if you don't like creepy kid books, I would steer clear of this. A lot of people have compared it to The Push. A lot of people, basically any creepy kid book this gets compared to, but I thought it was really different. So does it have like the Perfect Child vibes? Yes. Does it have the Push vibes? Yes, but it's done in a different way, and I just was really, I put this off for so many years because so many of my friends that have read it said no, it's not good. And then this year I really learned to read things that sound interesting to me despite what everybody else is saying, and this was one of those success stories. So very happy about that. The other sci-fi book that I recommended to Jordan, but I ended up reading myself, was Rabbits by Terry Miles. Another book that I was just low-key obsessed with. It was so interesting, unlike anything I've ever read. This is about this underground game, and not a lot of people know about it. It's like, if you're in the know, you know, but if you don't know, you don't know. But it's all about these like patterns and sequences and just like things that you randomly find. And I don't know, it was also very, very unique. So liked that one. Okay, the next book is by an author that I haven't liked their books before. So when I read this one, it was like, okay, this is the last time I'm gonna read this author. This is their last chance to impress me. And I'm talking about The Children on the Hill by Jennifer McMahon. I really enjoyed this one. Did I rate it 5 out of 5 stars? No. But I thought it was very interesting. I liked the writing, I liked the characters, I liked the plot, and I was just very pleasantly surprised by this one. It kind of has those like Frankenstein vibes. I do have a reading vlog of this, so I'll try to link this in the cards, but yeah, it's a genre-defying new novel inspired by Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, explores the eerie mysteries of childhood and the evils perpetuated by the monsters among us. So thought that was very cool. The next book I want to talk about is called Spare Room by 𝒍𝒊𝒏𝒌𝒔 Mitchell. This is a book I saw at the book exchange, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Behind Closed Doors. The cover and just like, you really don't know what goes on behind closed doors. This is about a woman that rents a spare room from a couple and the craziness that happens after that. Never read anything by this author before, picked it up at random, never heard anybody talk about it, and I was kind of in a reading slump at the time, and this pulled me right out of it, so I was pleasantly surprised by that. I was also pleasantly surprised by Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez, because a lot of people were reading the trilogy by this author and they didn't have positive things to say, so I kind of wrote this author off until this was one of the book of the month picks, and I was like, okay, maybe, but I originally passed on it, and then I saw it at the book exchange and I picked it up to take a chance on it, and I absolutely loved it. It was funny, it was emotional, it had all of the hallmarks of a rom-com and like Hallmark movies that I love. Small town, age gap, big city woman coming to a small town, those type of things. But it also has a lot of depth, a lot of like family expectations, past relationships, kind of like abusive, mentally and physically abusive relationships from your past affecting you in the present. So I really loved this one, you guys. Another sci-fi book, well, it actually has a lot of genres mixed in, and that is The Measure by Nikki Erlich. Obviously, this is a debut, so I've never read anything by this author before. I don't know if I would have been initially intrigued just to read this on my own, like if it would have released in any other year. But since I was really kind of exploring out things outside of my comfort zone, I decided to read this with my patrons, and it has so many cool elements and themes woven into a very simple premise of one day you waking up, going outside, there is a box, and inside that box it tells you how long you're going to live. And it follows 8 different people. Usually multiple POV books are a little intimidating for me, but it had romance, it had even like the government and religious small themes that were woven in, like made sense in this story. Like almost if they weren't there, it wouldn't have been complete. I love how she took her time with the characters. I was just so pleasantly surprised by this book and how much pretty much all of my patrons that read this enjoyed it, and I'm sure you're gonna see this popping up on some of their best books of the year lists. The next book I want to talk to you about is The Perfect Guest by Emma Rouse, the same author that wrote The Au Pair, which I haven't read yet, but this is the author. So if you've seen this book around, maybe you would have seen The Perfect Guest around as well. I was totally drawn in by the cover. I picked this up from my library to borrow, and I'm absolutely in the market for my own copy. It was a mystery, but I can't even explain. Like, like it was kind of like one of those quiet books where you're hearing about the past, you're hearing about the present, and how they like meld together. And I don't know, just the atmosphere was everything. So really pleasantly surprised by that one, and I really do want my own copy, and I also want to reread it. Let me take a little coffee break. All right, we still have a bunch of surprising books left. So The Funhouse by Diana Hoy surprised me because it was the first point horror book that I've ever read. You guys know I've been on this journey to read more horror in the last couple of years. This was one of my like forays over the summer, and this was just so fun. I've heard that point horrors could be really, really cheesy, and this one was just really, really fun. I loved the setting, and it was short, and it was just a fun, good time. This story is about a roller coaster that goes off the tracks. Someone sees that happen, and they're trying to figure out how did that ultimately happen. Next up is The Monstrous We Make by Callie White. I was surprised by this one because I've never heard anybody else talk about it. This is a fictionalized story based on true events. It's told through interwoven perspectives and based on the real-life Des Moines Register paperboy kidnappings in the early 1980s. So this one exposes how like crimes kind of pile on top of other crimes, and when you're hiding secrets, and how it's harder to get to the truth. So yeah, so you follow like Sammy Cox as he is hurrying home from his paper route, and other paper boys have gone missing, and you're trying to find out like why was he rushing home at the very beginning. And then you follow his 17-year-old sister Crystal, who wants to be a journalist, so she's totally intrigued that this case is happening, and she's trying to get to the truth of the matter. And then you follow Dale Goodkind, who is this officer that used to work in another town where a paper boy went missing, and now he's in this one, and it's happening again. So very, very interesting. Highly recommend. Like I said, it's short too, so you can get through it in the afternoon. Next up, The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. I wasn't a super fan of Ashley Winstead's debut, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, so I was pleasantly surprised when not only did I enjoy this one, but I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. This was just super dark, and I loved the characters and the pacing. I just liked how like dark and gritty it got. I was never bored while reading it. It's about this woman named Shay Evans. When she was in college, one of her friends like killed themselves, and now years later through this podcast she hears that her other best friend from college supposedly killed herself, and the podcast host is an old friend of hers and doesn't believe that this person committed suicide, so they team up to go back to this town and kind of investigate what happened. Yeah, lots of trigger warnings in that one though. So another book that I just took a chance on because a lot of people not vibing with this book, but me and my friend Nikki read it, and we both loved it and rated it 5 out of 5 stars. This is another example of read what you want to read, and don't let the opinions of other people affect what you're going to pick up. One Italian Summer by Rebecca Surley. This was so interesting. It's short, it's fast paced. I loved the mother-daughterhood aspect to the story. This one, it starts with this woman like really grieving the loss of her mother. Her mother has passed, and they were supposed to go on this trip to Italy, but now that her mother has passed, she still has all of that, like the vacation is planned, so she still goes. Well, she ends up bumping into a 30-year-old version of her mom. So is it believable? No, but it's like the messages of if that did happen, and the grieving process and so forth. So I really enjoyed this one, and like I said, it's short, so you can get through it fairly quickly. Something I read for my podcast this year with Sav from Riveting Reads was Just Like Mother by Anne Heltzel. This was also a debut, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. Yes, this is her adult debut, but I actually saw this in 2021, and I was just intrigued by the cover, read the synopsis. I was like, ooh, I'm doing that for a podcast episode, and we did, and it was a very fun discussion. But this was kind of like a cultish book, kind of like a toxic, you know, mother, like women run cult, and kind of like a friendship group. Weird creepy things start happening in this like gothic house out in the country and in the Catskills, and I don't know, it was just very surprising that I enjoyed it as much as I did. Another short one, Notes on an Execution by 𝒂𝒂💏. I really liked the twist on this serial killer story. I do like reading books about serial killers. Never read anything by this author before. I actually did try their debut and I wasn't really vibing with the writing, but in here, it's kind of literary, but it also has like mysterious, thrilling elements as well. But it's about this serial killer, Ansel, who is on death row, like counting down the hours until he is lethally injected. But the story really focuses on the victims and the women in the serial killer's life instead of salaciousizing the serial killers. So really enjoyed that one. Also, I was super surprised by Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. I just picked it up based on it having like older main characters, and recently having read The Thursday Murder Club and those being older characters and kind of like solving, you know, crimes and mysteries and stuff. But these characters are actually like retiring assassins, so that was super fun to read about, and I just had so much fun with these characters, so really loved that one. Then I have a couple of middle grades that really shocked me this year because I don't read that much middle grade. I think the last time I read middle grade was like a few years ago, and I only have like a handful of middle grade books that I have enjoyed, but I found at least 3 of them that I really enjoyed. The Haunting of Evelyn Jones. This was just the perfect setting, the perfect pace. I liked the pictures. I liked that I read this during Bookathon with my friends and we had a book discussion, and so it's like the experience outside of the book was amazing, but the story inside the book was just as amazing. I liked the main character. I liked how she was into ghosts and figuring out like what happened to this missing girl from the past, and it was actually really creepy. Midnight at the Barclay Hotel by Flora Bradley. Sorry, by Flora Bradley. This one really shocked me because it's like this murder mystery, but it has all of the same elements of like an adult story in this, where a group of like seemingly strangers come to this place, the hotel, and they're all told that they have to help solve who killed Mr. Barclay, and all of the guests have secrets, and it's just the kids figuring out like what's behind this mystery and what's going on. So that was super fun. Also, probably like the most shocking, I would say, is The Mystery of Black Hollow Lane by Julie Noble. I really hadn't heard many people, if anybody, talking about this, but it was like Harry Potter without the magic, and I just loved everything about it. It's like a dark academia middle grade. So excited to continue in this series in the new year. A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. This one shocked me because first book I read by this author, and when everybody was talking about this book, it was really divided. People either loved it or hate it, but the people that loved it said it's fantasy, it's magical realism, it's all of these words that when I hear, I go, that's not the book for me. Surprisingly, I did not think this was fantasy. Was it magical realism? Like, yes, and I get why people say fantasy, but I wouldn't say it's fantasy. It's about this man named Travis Wren that can hold an object from a person and like locate them. And then he ends up being led to this like place called Pastoral, that it's kind of like an urban legend, you know, like you've heard about it, but no one knows if it's really there. And then it flips over to these other characters that you follow, Theo, Calla, and B. And Theo and Calla are married, and B is Calla's blind sister, and they live in this community, Pastoral, the one that Travis stumbled upon, and they can never leave the community because there is a rot outside of the community, and just the crazy things that happen because they're all there. And an incident happens that they kind of need to leave the community, but they can't because you'll get sick and die and bring that to all of the other residents. So very interesting story, cult vibes for sure. Loved the plot twist. All right, next up is The Damage by Caitlin Ware. This was surprising because it wasn't really on my radar until I saw another booktuber read it, said it was very emotional, and I was like, I didn't even really know what the story was about. I just kept passing on it for some reason, maybe because it looks like historical historical fiction. I don't know. But this is about a family pushed to the brink and will do anything in the name of love and blood. So you have a main character named Nick who is raped at the beginning of the novel. And basically the other parts of the story are following like this cop and Nick's sister-in-law as they come together and they discuss the case and what happened and stuff like that. I don't know. I just liked the way it was written. I liked the way it was, I don't know. I liked the perspectives of the characters. Like you did get Nick, but you also got like his brother and his sister-in-law and this detective. And I don't know, was it like triggering for me specifically? No, but it can be. So definitely look up content warnings on this one. Another nonfiction book popping up on this list is Tell Me Everything, The Story of a Private Investigation by Erica Krause. Almost unhauled this. So glad I didn't. It's also another short one that you could get through fairly quickly. So fascinated by this, and I honestly thought it was going to be one of my favorite books of the year, but there was a portion towards the end that got a little like I don't really care. It's part true crime, part like just memoir of this woman's life. And I was definitely more interested in the part where she was like investigating this crime that took place. But when I was learning just like about her regular life outside of that, of her job, I was kind of like, I don't really care. But she is investigating this landmark rape case at this college campus, and how it would basically like keep happening, and she's randomly hired by this lawyer that gets this case and she's investigating it, and she seems like she had a very interesting life. But it is so interesting how she would talk to people and get them to reveal things that like normal people, lawyers, people like that are not able to get out of people. So it was very, very interesting. And if you like true crime, if you like memoirs, then you should get this one a go. Like I said, it's nonfiction, so it's based on like real things that really happened. And the last book that really, really shocked me is because I love reading Christmas romance books, and I read a bunch last year. I read a bunch this year. I actually got this for Christmas last year. So this stayed on my TBR for an entire year, and the only reason I picked it up this year is because my friend Keisha and I decided to buddy read it. So we were talking about, okay, what are your reading plans in December, because we'd been reading some books together previous to December, and she was like, what's on your December TBR? And I was showing her a few books that I have, and we both had A Cross Country Christmas by Courtney Walsh on our list. So we're like, let's buddy read it. Let's do like a little vlog, a little weekend reading vlog, 24-hour readathon vlog where we read this book. We did, and we both loved it so much. Like, I can't believe this was sitting on my shelf for an entire year. Like, ugh. But it's such a cute romance, all like on this cross-country trip home. I love road trip stories. I love romance. I love childhood friends to lover story. It had depth, it had banter, it was funny, it was emotional, it was just so good. So those are all of the books that surprised me this year. I had a lot of happy surprises. So let me know which books that you read this year surprised you. And that's all for today's video. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all having a lovely day or night, and I'll see you guys again in another video very soon. Bye, friends.
Sleigh bells ringing, diamonds blinging, carols sing.